Yeah, back then, again, this was 2008. I had less of a business mind back then. So back then, to me, it was more like akin to, what if someone took something from me? How would I like that? Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
the bad guy. I'm the good guy. But like you just said, it was a brilliant move. $1 billion to basically take number two back then. This was the early days of the modern smartphone. So
Yeah.
number two today is a whole different beast than back then. They set themselves up for major growth at the cost of $1 billion, which was nothing. The other thing Samsung did, which a lot of people don't realize, is HTC was primed to be number two and almost even with Apple. And what Samsung did, I had this great discussion with very, very high, he's actually a CEO of a major company today. And he said, most people don't realize that Samsung put 4G into their phone very early when almost no one supported 4G. Welcome to Geared Up. I'm Andrew Edwards.
I am John Rettinger.
Geared Up is your weekly look at the world of tech and gadgets. And John, we've actually broken the streak this week.
It needed to be broken. We couldn't top it.
This week, instead of having the best guest of all time, but still equal to all previous guests, we actually have found a guest that will surpass all previous guests. And that guest this week is our listenership and fan base. They are here this week and joining us.
Yes, happy to have everybody here. So podcast will be a little bit different. Andrew and I are going to talk about, a bunch of topics to go through, but then in between each topic, we're going to bring you guys in to ask questions. And if you want to ask questions and be on camera, you can join the front row little thing. It looks like VIP. Click it. We'll see you down below. We can bring you on camera. If you want to ask a question, just like in the chat, we can talk about, hit the questions tab and ask it there. Yes. We may not see all the stuff that comes up in the actual live chat.
Yeah, so if you have a specific question and you don't want to join us on stage, why wouldn't you want to join us on stage? Get your face up here, talk to us one-on-one. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to leave questions, hit the questions tab and we'll be sure to see them there. Now, as we said, this show is going to be full of guests. We've got our first one of my favorite people to speak to and eat dinner with, Mr. Jason Nellis. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing fine, thanks. And now that you've said that, now I'm just hungry, which is really disappointing for me because I have nothing to eat in front of me. But that's fine. That's fine. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for having me up on the show.
We're happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely.
It's strange for me because normally I host super shows, but to watch you guys do your podcast and to be a part of this and to now be immortalized in the Geared Up podcast world feels great.
Are we the first podcast ever be hosted on Super?
You are. So for folks that are new to Super, we're a platform that allows content creators like John and Andrew to host events where they get to connect with their audiences through, these kinds of intimate conversations. And you are, in fact, the first one that we've had where somebody is recording a podcast live. It's a lot of fun, and I'm pretty stoked to see how the hour turns out.
Yeah, so for the listeners, because we're doing a live show for people who are here, but this audio is going to also become this week's podcast episode. So for people hearing this, we're at super.events right now, and John and I can see each other almost in like a Zoom-ish type of chat, and then we can bring people in, like Jason or others, and see them, and we can talk with them as well, hear them, see them. And one by one, we can bring guests up and down from the, is this the stage? It is stage. This is the stage.
Well, so that's the point. We wanted to build a platform where you got to share the stage with your favorite influencers, content creators, and dare I say, YouTubers, which I know is Andrew's favorite term of all time.
Say that.
A trigger word for Andrew.
He gets a little hot under the collar whenever I say that, but it's worth it just to see him get angry. But no, this is really exciting. I mean, I've had the pleasure of hosting both of you on Super. This is the first time I've ever been a guest on Super, and I don't know what to do. It's very confusing.
Right. You don't have the control. I have all the controls right now.
You do.
On my screen. So you're just here to talk to us.
I am. And since I rarely get the chance to ask questions as an audience member, particularly of the two of you, I have to ask favorite ice cream flavor, because I feel like we're going to have to go out and get some food at some point, and I got to start planning.
I mean, that's an easy one. That is pistachio 100 out of 100 times. It's a solid
pistachio.
Choice. See, no one saw it coming. I am full of surprises.
Yes. Yes, you are.
I mean, that is a great flavor, though. I will admit, as is another rarity, rum raisin, although that is not my favorite. When I see
Fair
rum
enough.
raisin, I'm like, I might have to get that. I may have had my favorite ice cream and discovered it 2 days ago. It was, you take the cereal, Lucky Charms, and you soak it in the milk. And then you use that milk to make the ice cream base. And then you mix in the marshmallows into the cereal. So it basically becomes a Lucky Charm.
Yeah, we had that at Milk Bar at CES, didn't we?
No, we did not have that at Milk Bar. They did not have Lucky Charms. No, that is corn. They have cornflake.
Got it.
All right.
Got it.
Andrew,
Anything cereal, I'm happy with. Quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Andrew, I got to get us to our first topic.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
Jason, you are welcome to stay here, join us, and chime in. Usually
Andrew's
we
in
start-
control. Yeah, I'm
Usually
happy to stick around.
Our first topics are usually happy, upbeat, exciting bits of news. But it's a sad day. We need to start off with the funeral. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here this evening in remembrance of LG Mobile.
LG Mobile.
Released their first Android smartphone in 2009, its first tablet in 2011. They are best known for their G series of smartphones and a wide range of other products. They brought us pre-Android smartphones like the LG Prada, LG Chocolate. The Wing most recently was their hit. It looked like the future was turning around. It was bright. But LG Electronics, LG Mobile Phone division
Yes.
is no more. And it is
Correct.
I think a lot of ways a sad day. And I think if we'd all bought phones as much as we like sharing the remembrance of LG, perhaps we'd be having a different meeting here. But I want to talk about LG for a little bit. What happened, where the beginning of the end was for them, was the decision smart? So I'll jump in, Andrew, then I'll throw it to you.
Please.
In my estimation, the LG G4, I think, was the beginning of the end of LG Mobile. And they had done a lot of really excellent innovation on the hardware side. G Flex with backs that were healing themselves. They had done a lot of really interesting things. I believe they were the first major manufacturer to put the fingerprint reader on the back, which seemed like a crazy, weird thing to have. They stuck by the headphone jack when everybody else had beaten them. It was pretty amazing. But software issues, boot loop issues, they never got the software as right as they were. It was a tough day, and I think people who jumped on the G4 train never gave LG a chance after that. I think the reputation was too damaged. The competition got too great. Other players came in, the players from China, but OnePlus came in, and of course, Samsung and Apple.
Yeah, I agree. If I could be contrarian for a moment, though.
A little bit, do it.
I don't know that I'm so sad about the disappearance of LG Mobile.
Fair enough.
Okay? Like, listen, what I do like competition. The more competition that's out there, the better. I'm not going to say it as a blanket statement, but I think that overall, that's pretty much the sentiment in any industry. The more competition there is, the better it is for the average consumer out there, because all the companies kind of push each other to be better and be greater because they want you to choose their product versus, the other 5 or 6 versus just the other one that may be out there. I feel like LG as a company, like, phones didn't really matter to them. It's almost like Google. Like, Google has so many things they pay attention to that the Pixel is not a priority when you compare it to, like, advertising, search, YouTube, things like that. Like, the Pixel is just kind of out there. Versus Samsung, who basically paid $1 billion to become number 2.
Sure.
Samsung copied basically the iPhone and was found guilty of copying the iPhone and had to pay $1 billion fine. But that $1 billion was nothing to become the number 2. Like, that was, here's my payment, and now we're number 2. Fantastic. So LG didn't do that. They're making these great TVs. They make washers and dryers. They make refrigerators. That they're so spread thin that I don't know how you can say they really gave it their best shot with phones.
I think that's a fair take. So I want to share a story. We're going to get back.
Wait, Jason's raising his hand. Let this man say something.
Yeah. So you got plenty of other people in the front row here that I think are going to have much stronger opinions. So I'm going to ask Andrew if you can kick me off after I say this one thing, which is I've never used an LG phone. Nobody I know was ever impressed with an LG phone, and I'm not sure it's going to be that sad to see them leave. And I know saying something so controversial and so brave at the same time is really brutal, but there it is.
I mean,
all right. I'm going to let Jason go.
All right. So before we bring in this next point, Andrew, can you bring in Painfully Honest Tech here? Because this point, I think, ties into him pretty well.
Bringing him in right now.
Can you guys hear me?
I can. And the reason I wanted you here first was to say hello. But also LG.
Hold on, let people know who are listening. Let people know who are listening.
We're gonna get there. Hold on. I'm teeing up an intro. Come on, man. LG was, I think, one of the last of the major manufacturers that cared about the quality of their audio. And you could say what you want about LG, and people clearly spoke that they didn't care. But with DAC and headphone jack, a lot of people, LG was really their only option that they had left.
That is true.
So I thought bringing in Painfully Honest Tech here, who I know is a very talented musician, I'd be curious about your thoughts on LG, how they sort of fit into the music space, and of course, allow you to introduce yourself before Andrew interrupts.
Man has a good ear.
Well, good evening, afternoon, whatever it is right now. But yeah, thanks for bringing me on. I kind of hear what both of you guys are saying. LG is the only manufacturer that stuck with the headphone jack, and they didn't just stick with the headphone jack. They made the best headphone jack that you could possibly hope for in a smartphone and said, we're going with it. Year after year, it was like, is LG finally going to drop the headphone jack? And it was looking like, 2021 might be the year that they were going to, but no headphone jack on the wing, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I mean, this kind of goes to what Andrew was saying. They didn't market their phones. To me, and I've said this multiple times on streams that I've had and in videos, if they had marketed to the audiophile community, if they had said, if you love music, you'll love this phone, this is what we're bringing to the table, then maybe that's one of the ways that they stay relevant. I had somebody just comment on, I think, one of my videos that said, if LG made like just a plain bare bones Android phone that had no super bells and whistles or anything like that, but just almost like a Play Edition phone, but with that headphone jack at $600, that may be how they stay relevant, because they stayed too close to Samsung and Apple. What they tried to do to differentiate themselves didn't work.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
I don't claim to know the answer to this 100%, but is marketing the fact that you have a fantastic headphone jack for music lovers, when I assume most people who would claim to be music lovers have moved on to wireless headphones? Isn't that almost akin to saying, hey, buy our laptop, we still have the best CD-ROM drive that you can get. No one else is putting it in there.
No. That's not, those aren't even close things.
Yeah, I think that if you're somebody especially somebody who's a headphone aficionado, who has multiple sets of high impedance headphones that, they love to listen to Tidal on and get the most out of that high quality streaming that Tidal gives you, or they have their own collection of stuff that they want to load onto an SD card and drop into their phone. There are more people out there that do that. I mean, they might not be the most visible, but if you go on headfi.org, or if you go, any of those places, there are forums and all different kinds of stuff of people who are really into that and who really value having that opportunity. There's still, like, Sony still sells like $1,000 MP3 player.
Yeah.
So
does it sell well though?
Well, it sells well enough for them to keep making it. And, FIO still sells dedicated stuff for music listening. I just think that LG tried to play in the market where Samsung was willing to pay $1 billion to be number two, and Apple was all in on the iPhone from day one, and LG, they just didn't come to the table. They were one of the only companies that probably could have competed with them, but they had the boot loop issues, and they never advertised their phones. And they never advertised them to a market of people that would say, hey, that's an alternative to me. Instead of going Samsung with no headphone jack, instead of going Apple with no headphone jack, that's something that I can eliminate one thing out of my arsenal. and still have the high quality audio.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of CD-ROMs, I mean, CD-ROMs are a dead media. Whereas I think high quality headphones for the people who really love them are always going to be superior to wireless headphones, or at least for quite a while, because you just can't move that bandwidth.
So I agree with that 100%. We obviously have the benefit of hindsight, right? I don't want to beat a dead horse, on the corpse of LG Mobile here, but I think there's a lot of things that could have been done different. And if we can just look back as an exercise for what could have been done, I think what was just said about leaning into a stock Android experience would have been a very solid way to differentiate. LG leaned really heavily into software as service, and that's why there wasn't a stock Android experience with duplicate apps, with preloaded apps being put in there that they obviously get paid for. It was a Trojan horse to get you into LG's software, and their software was never their strong point. And when you look at what transpired, it became very obvious, and consumers spoke with that. But to sort of harken the point of the audio side of things, marketing themselves as the anti-Samsung, the anti-Apple. We care about this subset. You have companies that are building their whole reputation on gaming for smartphones, which I would argue is a smaller market than those who care about high quality audio. Could have been a really interesting niche for LG to be in. Their screens were always amazing. Heck, they make screens for almost every other phone before Samsung jumped in. But they relied really heavily on their software, and software was never, ever the strong point of what they offered. And just as an example, I guess we can share this now behind the scenes. Andrew, were you in San Francisco for the G8 unveiling and pre-brief that we had in person?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember they had the gestures where you kind of had to make a little claw hand?
Oh my God.
And you could turn it.
I forgot about that.
Do you remember that?
Yes. Terrible.
So they had you could gesture. It was kind of solely based stuff, or it seemed like solely inspired at least. And they touted this for a while to people in the room, how amazing it was. And they gave us advices to film while we were there. And I looked around the spot at some of the largest, most influential YouTubers on the market, or in the world, and everybody's going like this and then raising their hands. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And I think that it's not working, and that frustration was just what happened with LG. I don't want to push that. It was just one topic, but I did want to talk about it, and I really did want Jason's opinion here as somebody I know who cares about music.
Yeah.
Yes. And Jason, if you stick around, we may have other topics we might want to bring you back up if you have the time.
If you're able.
Oh yeah, I'll hang around for quite a while. Cool.
All right. Let me bring up another guy who I know has some strong opinions on this topic. Incredible opinions. He's just a strong man in general. Where did John go? Where did John go? Well, listen, John is while he's refreshing his screen, I'm bringing in the most opinionated men in tech, Mr. Thunder E. Enabong. How are you doing, sir?
I am good. Can you see me?
We can see you. You look great.
Thanks for having me, guys. I want to thank Warren for letting me know about this, because I wanted to jump in because I've been seeing a lot of tweets about LG's failures and how sometimes we influencers have played into it in terms of reviews and coverage. But honestly, that is just not true, because this failure started from LG. I mean, if you look at what they said, they had 5 years of just poor results. I can't remember how many quarters they stated. And we can trace this back all the way to the G5. Now, LG is a company that you can go to many different points of what has happened with the company and say it's this or that. But when it comes down to the brass taxes, LG never advertised at all properly. That's the first thing. They also had a poor release strategy. They relied on carriers to release their devices, which means we would get devices hands-on in January, say, I'm just giving a month. Review will be dropped 2 months after, in maybe March, and then it gets released in May. How do you expect the consumer to care about your device at that point? Doesn't matter what anyone says. If you say it's a fantastic device, it is lost in the shuffle. Then
it feels old at that point, even though it's not even out yet. It feels like it's old.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely correct. And then you have the points you stated with software, where their software, they pushed a lot of software things that just didn't make sense. One prime example was, last year with the V60, I went to the briefing and LG said, hey, we're going to focus a lot on gaming on this device because we've got the dual screens and you can have the controls on the screen. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're like, we talked to a lot of gamers and things like that. I'm like, all right, so your case, does it have button triggers on there? And they're like, no. And I'm going, then why are you telling me you're focusing on gaming when the biggest games people play are PUBG Mobile, Call of Duty Mobile, anything that has to be a shooter, and you don't have surface triggers? Why are you wasting my time? And the response was, well, we were thinking about it and we'll see. We didn't want to deter. I'm like, your triggers don't have to be massive. They just have to be available. And they could be remapped as a camera button if you wanted to. Just like simple things like that. And to me, LG's always been little brother. That's what I call them. They're little brother. As a company, Samsung is big brother, LG's little brother. There are certain things LG does well, and they live in the shadow of big brother, and they couldn't step away from that shadow. They didn't realize that, look, HTC made a mistake and looked at that mistake and said, okay, let's not do any of that. Let's see what's happening. They didn't look at OnePlus and say OnePlus is a smaller company, but they're doing something well. Let's copy some of that and do this. I mean, with a company that makes so many components, they make components themselves. They make displays, they make batteries, they make some memory, not individual memory units, but they do have a memory division. So they have the components to make a smartphone. They have divisions that can support that growth. You know, there's something Renee always talks about. It's like, look, the reason smartphone business is difficult is because it requires a lot of spend, and also you're going to lose a lot of money for a while. As long as you have divisions that cover, you look at Apple. Apple has, you know, different business segments that are profitable. Same thing with Samsung. LG has those, but then they use the mistake of saying, because we have bigger units, we must force what the bigger unit is doing to our platform. Remember the ThinQ branding? I mean, that to me just reeks of having lack of focus and not understanding the market you're in. Now, we can always go back and say, hey, look, reviewers didn't like it or didn't compare, or it was an issue, pointing out the fact that, look, a lot of big tech reviewers just didn't see LG favorable. And that may be true, but also LG didn't live up to the standards it created. That's the part of people, you know, we live in short-term memory because, you know, we've been in this game, all three of us here have been in this game for years. And we know how long this has gone. You know, I was talking to Danny Wingate earlier, and I was like, I miss the LGs of the LG Flex days, the original Flex. Yes, it didn't do well, but it was just such a cool concept device. And they were the first ones to bring the quad DAC to smartphones. You know, you were talking about audio earlier and not focusing on that. They kept the removable battery on for a while. They're talking about modular smartphones, but it seems like they couldn't take that innovative thinking and then streamline it to a market that's more mature. They kind of just went off kilter. But I know I'm talking and like pointing things out. I think it was just because today, seeing people say it was a lot of influencers' fault, to me is just absolutely rubbish. Because as much as we have influence, we do not have the power to sway stupidity from a company's trajectory that they're taking themselves into. Just hands down.
I feel you. Now, I appreciate that. I appreciate that take. I want you to stick around because we have another topic we're going to talk about soon regarding Game Pass that I think you need to be a part of. But I do want to say one thing about ThinQ. I think LG would say, no, we were focused because ThinQ wasn't just on our phones. It's on our stoves. It's on our fridges. It's on our washer dryers. And they think as a company that they're creating a whole ecosystem that really nobody bought into. So there you go.
No,
again, stick around for us. We got to bring someone else up real quick. John?
Yes.
Are you ready to switch? Ready to switch topics here?
All right.
Other people who have joined the show may be fans of us, but we've got someone here who has supported our show and us just in general for quite a while. This is Jonathan. I'm bringing him up here. Jonathan, how are you doing, sir?
What's up, guys? Nice to finally meet you. I'm NYR fan on Twitter, so...
It is nice to meet somebody with a wonderful name. I want to throw that one. Before I get to the next topic, Jonathan, I do want to ask you first. Do you have questions that you want to ask us directly? And then I can pivot to our next topic and we can sort of leave you here to share your opinion.
My question wasn't really on LG, but I actually wanted to just say, like, if you don't remember the first camera phones that Verizon had back in the day, that was my LG experience, and the chocolate.
Yeah, that was a great phone.
And the LG chocolate. Dual screen, but I would love to hear your thoughts. I don't know if it's a topic further down the podcast about Apple's future as they just passed 45 years. What you think, keeping themselves in the forefront of tech, what they need to do that.
Andrew, the question is Apple keeping themselves at the forefront of tech. I think Apple's doing exactly what they need to be doing. I mean, Apple is innovating where appropriate and moving into new markets realistically.
Yeah.
So they're not pivoting into crazy new things they don't see a market for. The next pivot we'll probably see, at least appears to be the AR glasses and that augmented reality space. I don't know how big or little that is. If Apple's moving in, you can bet the house it's going to be a crowded space very soon.
Yeah, I feel like Samsung will come out with something like first, and then Apple will just sit there taking notes quietly, and then they'll swoop in and grab the lead.
That's how Apple does it. But I do sort of have that's a good pivot to my next topic that
I'm back.
Andrew brought up, who I still can't hear. By the way, there it is. He's back. So Andrew, you brought up Samsung earlier.
Yeah.
And this wasn't a topic I planned on discussing. It's a bit of an older discussion, but I think in light of LG, it's extra relevant right now. So you said Samsung paid $1 billion to become number 2, and I think up until last quarter they were number 1 until they were overtaken by Apple. And I wanted to just talk about that for a minute because people may forget what happened and what transpired.
Sure.
And this is by Samsung's own admission. These are court records. This is a public dispute. Samsung essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, saw themselves a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago.
Let's say 2008.
Yeah, as behind in the space, behind in the mobile space. And they clearly had two paths. They could go their own path of their own R&D, trial, test, spend a lot of money, release products, see what works and doesn't work, and adjust like a lot of companies do. Or they could essentially take their R&D from Apple. They could use what Apple had been doing. They could use Apple's design language. They could use a lot of Apple's R&D, put it in their phones, knowing very well they were going to pay a price for that down the road. The ethics are one conversation of that, and the business decision is another conversation, I think. And obviously, it has paid off for Samsung. Their S line, when it started, versus what their S line is now, is heavily influenced by what transpired in the past in 2008 and prior, and after, rather. And they paid $1 billion for it. Now, I argue from a business standpoint, it was probably one of the most brilliant business moves in the history of modern business.
For sure.
Their R&D costs would have, by all accounts, been 4 to 5x what that would have been. And there's no guarantee they would have been in the 1 or number 2 spot for smartphone market share, depending on the quarter. Yeah. The ethics side of it is a very different discussion. And certainly, I think that's a very clear-cut answer there as well. But Andrew, I wanted to ask you your opinion on what Samsung did. And I'm not trying to editorialize it. Certainly, it paid off, for them. But where do you sort of fall on that?
Yeah, back then, again, this was 2008. I had less of a business mind back then. So back then, to me, it was more like akin to, what if someone took something from me? How would I like that? Oh, well, that's the bad guy. I'm the good guy. But like you just said, it was a brilliant move. $1 billion to basically take number 2 back then. This was the early days of the modern smartphone. So number 2 today is a whole different beast than back then. They set themselves up for major growth at the cost of $1 billion, which was nothing. The other thing Samsung did, which a lot of people don't realize, is HTC was primed to be number 2 and almost even with Apple. And what Samsung did, I had this great discussion with very, very high, he's actually a CEO of a major company today. And he said, most people don't realize that Samsung put 4G into their phone very early when almost no one supported 4G.
The Thunderbolt.
But yes. and what happened there is, because they did that, they made deals with all the carriers. The carriers were going to charge you more for 4G. So when you went into a carrier store, the employees were told 4G phones are the future. We're going to be selling 4G plans for, $5 or $10 more per month. Promote these phones first. If someone comes in and they want a phone, this is our priority. And that moved, because back then carrier stores were what it was all about. You weren't pre-ordering directly from Samsung or anything. Apple was probably the only one you could pre-order directly from. You're going to the mobile phone. So when they started pushing these Samsung devices, they had them at the front of the stores. They would tell people, hey, this is what you want to buy. This is going to be the new hotness. Samsung basically stole the number 2 spot just by putting in this technology that no one was ready to use yet 2 years before Apple put it into the iPhone 5. So it was a 1-2 punch. We're going to copy the iPhone, but we're going to have faster wireless networking, or at least we're going to say we do, even though you may not be able to connect to it. It's kind of like today with 5G. You may not be able to connect to 5G, but when you hear your phone has it, you're going to assume it's going to be a faster experience. So Samsung really did come through with a brilliant move to take the number 2 spots back then, which was very important because it allowed them to continue growing. And I feel like when they came out with the S6, that's when they diverged from, oh, this is just the Android version of an Apple device, to actually having their own look and feel and kind of signature about their devices.
And I think the point that's being made in the comments too is the marketing behind it. Remember the commercials mocking the people waiting in line for phones? You know, camping in line for Apple. I mean, Samsung's marketing was absolutely brilliant. So, Jonathan, I want to give you the opportunity. If you have any more questions you want to ask before we pivot over to our next topic.
Well, I just want to say also, I agree with Andrew that that's when S6 is when they kind of separated themselves from the pack and kind of grew to what they are today. I've seen people say that I have much respect for Samsung's phones. I happen to be an iPhone user, got the iPhone 12 Pro right here, so I'm on the iPhone upgrade program. But I've gained a lot of. I just actually wanted to come on and also say thank you to you both verbally. How much you've influenced me and helped my work just by being what you do.
That.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So you should have continued success in all you do, and then you should have good health as well. I know we're still getting out of the pandemic, but Andrew, you just got your shot the other day, so kudos.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I keep up with people who and I continue to push your brands, so to speak, with people around here.
Thank you for the kind words and your support. Thank you, my friend.
Always.
Thank you.
Always.
All right, Andrew.
All right.
I'm going to move on to your favorite topic. I'm just going to give it to you. I'm going to tee it up for you. I'm going to let you run with it. Hey, do you have any strong opinions about Game Pass?
Oh, boy. Okay. See, I asked Annabong to stick around. I also see Warren down there. These two gentlemen are going to have to join in on this topic. But I just want to say, Jonathan, are you familiar with MLB The Show? It's a video game.
Yes, of course.
Okay, let's make sure.
Sports fan, of course. I'm MLB The Show. My problem, though, is that it's another game, right? It gets expensive to buy these games every year, $60, $70.
Here's the thing with MLB The Show. It has been a PlayStation staple, an exclusive for over a decade, maybe even 2. It's been a very long time.
Yes.
If you want to play this game, you had to have a PlayStation or know someone with a PlayStation and go to their house. Now, the MLB said, because Sony makes the game, but they're licensing from the MLB. So here's what happened. MLB says, hey, Sony, we want more people to be able to access this game. You are putting this on the Xbox as well. We're putting it on the Xbox, okay? So people can buy it on PlayStation. People can buy it on Xbox. I believe this game is going to be $60 or $70, okay? No big deal. It's still surprising it's coming to Xbox, but the fact that this new fact caused so much controversy. Microsoft went to the MLB and said, hey, we have this new thing called Game Pass. People pay us $15 a month or even $10 a month.
Yep.
And they can access this library of games. And what we would like to do is put MLB The Show on Game Pass on day one of availability. So now, if you are a PlayStation owner and diehard, you have to pay that $60 to $70 for this game to play it, while Xbox owners, people who subscribe to Game Pass, get it on day one at no additional fee. Xbox stole the show.
Now, Andrew, I want to remind you that PlayStation has an equivalent that I believe offers Ratchet and Clank from 6 years ago for free and download. Xbox Game Pass is becoming such a compelling reason to switch consoles or just get a subscription and play it wherever. And it gets more compelling each major release.
Let's get someone up on here with us.
All right.
I'm going to bring up Warren right now. Warren, first time. Warren, let me unmute you. How are you doing, sir?
What's happening, Warren?
What's happening? You guys can hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay, awesome. Good. Yeah, like Xbox Microsoft pulled a good move here. They're leveraging Game Pass heavily, and it makes a lot of sense. One of the other reasons I think MLB did this is because there's no baseball game on Xbox at all. Yeah. So 2K stopped making their game, so there's only one baseball game like this. But the difference being is I don't think it's like Madden where it's exclusively set that way. So it makes sense for them to do this. And it's making Game Pass more and more compelling. And it's really, I think, a way to, one, drive consoles, and then two, you can drive PCs with it as well, too, because it works on PC as well. And all you need is an Xbox controller to be able to just play it and just go with it. So I can see Sony fans being a bit salty about this, but I think what you mentioned, John, that Sony has an equivalent. I just recently did a video about this. They actually don't really have a direct equivalent to Game Pass.
They don't.
They have two separate services, which I did a video explaining about recently, that I still have to explain in the comments because of how they have these two services set up, because it does not make any sense that they have it separated the way they do. This is really the one key thing Microsoft can do to compete in this space because of how badly they messed up the Xbox One, pulling a lot of LG marketing tactics with the way they did a lot of things. They cleaned it up at the end, but it was far too late by the time they did it. They let the media run away with the narrative that they allowed to run, because if you looked at what Microsoft was talking about in selling a game console, it makes 100% sense in making it an media entertainment device. They were telling you, hey, we want to give you more out of your system than just playing games. And gamers got mad about that.
Right.
Far be it from me why I understand
Phil Spencer days, though. Let's give Phil Spencer the credit for taking that and turning it completely around.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Microsoft's going to have to make more moves like this. We saw the Bethesda move just happen. There's talks of them getting Sega down the road or trying to buy the Sega franchise, which I hope they do. Because this is a question for you guys, a discussion you might want to have. We know a Switch XL is coming. It's going to be called XL, just by the way Nintendo does their naming. Sony has
Super Switch.
I think they'll save that for when they actually graphically change the thing to something else. Okay. I think they will save that. We know Sony's kind of bowed out of this game, but a PS Vita 2 has to be somewhere in the pipeline for them to compete in the space, because Nintendo has proven that if portable gaming is still a thing, mobile gaming is a separate thing. They're two separate things. Mm-hmm. And Nintendo's proven that with the Switch. Microsoft doesn't have anything in this space, but what if they buy Sega and then can redistribute out the Game Gear? We'd have three players in both spaces, which I don't think we've ever had since the 90s.
A long time. But I wonder, is it necessary? If you can get Game Pass on an iPhone, on an Android device, on tablets, on PC.
On an iPhone.
Well, we haven't seen it yet, but from what I've heard, just so everyone knows, I live in Seattle. I live about 15 minutes from the Xbox campus. So there's a lot of people around me that work in that area. From what I'm hearing, not just for iPhone, but for browser in general, it's actually going to be a pretty good experience. Way better than what I initially assumed it would be, which sounds like garbage. But if you can have a good mobile experience on tablets, on phones, on computers, do you still need dedicated hardware, or do you just focus on getting it anywhere that you can? Any device you already have, Game Pass is there for you.
I think it's overstated how many people actually will game like that on mobile phones. It's interesting. Yes, you can do it, but you got to carry a separate controller. You got to carry a clip. You got to carry more with it versus something like a Nintendo Switch, especially the Switch Lite. Everything's connected there right to it. I even noticed, I play my mobile games, and obviously I play Game Pass and such as well too. But when it came down to wanting to play on that mobile experience, I picked up my Switch Lite far more to play Super Metroid, a game I never played before, actually, surprisingly. And I played and beat that on the Switch Lite. I didn't even want to play it on my TV. I wanted to play right in there in that experience. Mm-hmm. I played a metric ton of Super Mario 35, way too much than anyone should have humanly actually did. I got a star next to my number. That's how how far I went with that. Yeah. I like that experience, and I think that's so different than playing on a mobile phone, because your phone can game, and the phone's not even really doing the gaming. It's being streamed over in the cloud. So you just have another screen that you're viewing that experience on. So it's like, what's the difference between that and just playing it on your computer or just playing it on your TV?
So can I jump in here with a crazy what if for you guys?
Please do.
Crazy what if world. So the Switch has been a runaway hit, right? Mobile gaming, dock at your TV, that experience comes with you wherever you go. We're seeing Game Pass now, still in beta, but ultimately come to, let's say, the iPhone.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
On your browser. Now, last I checked, Apple's been changing their ways and getting Apple software on TVs a lot more, whether you own a Roku or other manufacturers. And Microsoft has been playing really nicely with their partners. They're no longer direct competition with Apple, outside of the PC space, right? Microsoft makes some of the best iPhone apps going. What if AirPlay 3 is coming? Hypothetically, AirPlay 3 is coming, really low latency. Suddenly, when wirelessly now, you can achieve that same docking of your phone, and you can use your Xbox controller. You can use a PlayStation controller, whatever Bluetooth controller works. What if that's Microsoft's move? What if that's the thing that gets them out of making physical console hardware? And like, you've got a phone, you've got an iPhone, awesome. We have a service for you. Apple has the user base. It's a network good. Microsoft might have the money to persuade Apple to do it. And it would imagine that keynote announcing whatever, the iPhone 14. AirPlay 3 comes out. And if you want to buy an iPhone, you're also getting what would be considered a wireless Xbox.
I mean, isn't that effectively what Google does with Chromecast and Stadia stuff?
Except it doesn't work with the new Stadia. It doesn't work with the new Chromecast hardware. Yeah. Doesn't work that great. I'm just saying. That's a what if.
I can't see Apple doing that without them trying to force you to buy an Apple TV. I just can't see them not tying some hardware to what that service would be. I definitely can see what you're saying with them doing that with like another AirPlay. But what would the experience be? And could they guarantee that experience to be as console-like as possible? And we've seen with Amazon Luna and Google Stadia that really hasn't been proven to be a great thing in the cloud. Now, I can see them doing that for their own Apple Arcade and games and stuff like that. But mobile gaming, like I said, mobile gaming and console gaming are two different things, because mobile gaming has titles, but it's really dependent upon the freemium and the microtransaction market versus portable games. You buy that, you kind of got it what it is with a couple of add-ons, but the add-ons you get on console games tend to be of a higher quality. You kind of get more out of it than you do with a smartphone game, a mobile game, which can also just shut down, because that happened to me before. I used to play a lot of Tetris Blitz and it just shut the game down. And I'm still hot about that. I invested some money into that game that is like, EA just said, no, just shut it down. But that could be a real concern, because you don't see that with the dedicated consoles. I mean, we have the PS3, PSV, and PSP store shutting down, but they gave you a way to access those games as long as you bought those games at some point. You can download those and play those again at any point in time. And I imagine if they release new mobile or portable hardware again, like a Vita 2, you'd probably have access to that again.
Sure.
In the smartphone side of things, you have none of that. They just kill your game. Who cares if you paid $30 and invested another $100 into it? So unless you're like Candy Crush that will live forever, or Asphalt 9 that will live forever, it's very questionable about any other game you invest into.
All right. Warren, thank you. I want to bring up Enabong back up here, because this man has strong opinions. Then, if he's still available, we'll do Painfully Honest Tech to get his opinion on this, and then we'll go to questions and go out from there. So let's get Enabong back up here. This man's a Game Pass user. Him and I have basically been trying to tell people what they were missing with Game Pass. People just, it's just the Netflix of gaming. No, there's something more here you're not seeing. We've been making this argument for the past 7 months, so it's interesting to see what's happening now. So, Enabong, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
So here's the thing with Game Pass. We've had these discussions on Twitter. Viper, who was one of those people who refused, is now a fan. And I think, to the point of saying this is like Netflix of gaming is actually very apt and correct. It's very correct in the sense that people are treating this like Netflix from 7 years ago. I'm not understanding it. It feels closer to Netflix that we currently have. With this announcement with the MLB The Show 21 coming, it makes perfect sense. And Microsoft is showing its leverage. They said they're going to buy a bunch of things. They were going to do a lot of things to showcase what they can do. And they are. By number one, Bethesda is huge. A lot of people don't realize once the games start flowing in directly from Bethesda, how You have to get an Xbox, or you have to get a game. At least you have to get Game Pass to play. The other aspect is we know Discord is probably going to be finalized unless something comes out of left field for that. But them adding Discord cements the PC side of gaming and giving PC a proper voice chat, which again allows Microsoft to get its own Clubhouse because Discord has said they're going to include Clubhouse features, that social network that Microsoft has been missing. Then you now move forward to some of the things you were discussing with Warren, where Warren said, we're talking about where else will this go? Microsoft has said, we heard Phil Spencer talk about having like a smaller dongle-like box for Xbox Game Pass streaming, right? He mentioned something like that could come in the future. We know that LG has partnered with Stadia, and Stadia app will be coming later this year to LG TVs. Mm-hmm. And I know that Microsoft will be doing the same, will show up for some Samsung TVs. So you have that on TVs that you're going to buy in 2021. Then you're going to be able to have a little dongle you can buy and just connect to your TV and basically stream Game Pass that way. So the idea of having the Xbox everywhere becomes a reality for Microsoft, because for them, what they're doing here is simply just saying, pick your medium. Now, the other thing, too, that's interesting is when it comes to the mobile space, Warren said, PlayStation should come back with a PlayStation Vita 2, which I believe they should. Competition is great. We also just heard an announcement that Qualcomm, at least it was a rumor that Qualcomm is building their own mobile gaming handset in partner with Tencent. I saw a report last week that Tencent has spent close to $1 billion in working on this mobile handset or something like that. I can't remember the exact amount. Now, that is for mobile gaming, but a device like that brings into question some of the things that Warren was talking about. Having the ability to move into that gaming space mobile, that is more of a hybrid of both. And you take the Duo. Yes, the Duo failed on many accounts, but it's also showed a lot of promise on a lot of accounts, right? Its first outing wasn't great, but this is typical Microsoft with their first outing on devices. It's never really spot on. But you can see the idea of the Duo not being as powerful, something like that, not being as powerful as you want to, or making a device, a handheld that literally is not that powerful. You can take like a 3-year-old phone spec and create a mobile streaming device if you wanted to. Now, I'm not saying it's something now, but it's down the line you can actually bring to the table. Now, I think what it does for the industry is now it should wake Sony up. Sony has to look at it and say, we cannot have PlayStation Now, PlayStation Plus. We need to combine those two as one. Like, there is no way that's going to happen. And Nintendo needs to wake up and make its own Nintendo Super Pass or whatever, because I know they love selling us Mario every new device, but I am getting tired of rebuying stuff all over again. So I think that needs to happen. But I think it's going to be, it's an interesting space that Microsoft is playing, because Microsoft has just said, look, we're technology giants. So we're going to take that to the next level. And I'm also looking at Sony, I'm going, gaming phones have become more mature. Why can't you make a gaming phone that literally has a better camera, has better audio, because you do well in all those categories? And this is kind of going back to that whole LG argument of saying sometimes some of these companies don't realize what they need to do to make things work. Now, on the last part where John was talking about like an AirPlay 3 and Apple, coming into that mix, I think Apple is having a hard time with what they want to do. And I don't think we'll see that, because Apple has tried to create a hurdle by saying, go make a web app if you want to bring Stadia, Game Pass, GeForce Now over. Mm-hmm. Because Apple just released some new games on Apple Arcade, some nice stuff, which is great, because they know very well that once the console generation hits, then us gamers are like, oh my, this is new game. And if you can get it on Game Pass easily, or even Stadia, they just put it that way. If you can get it on any of the services and play directly with your phone, you're not going to want to spend more time on Apple Arcade. So they have to figure out how, because for them, it's not to figure out if they care about the market, it's figure out, can they make money? Apple makes most of its money from the App Store. That is literally where they make a bulk of their cash. So when games are now taken away from the store, it becomes a problem. So I think right now they're looking at ways to frame that in some perspective where they can get some of that cash in. I mean, it's a business. I'm not faulting them for that. It's just what you need to do in that sense. Yeah, but I think it's interesting because right now PlayStation fanboys are angry. They're angry that MLB The Show is going away, and they're thinking, what else will be taken from us, right? And they're not realizing that they should demand that PlayStation does the same. Because one thing about, if you're a PlayStation player, all you need to do is just pay for Game Pass. You do not need to get an Xbox. Exactly. Like you mentioned, there's a web app coming. There will be an app for Windows, which means then your Intel Ultrabook becomes a gaming device. Like, you don't need to download anything anymore. Even your Chromebook becomes a more respected gaming device because you're playing it off Chrome. Done. Simple. So those are the things that I think Sony needs to really look at and say, look, if we don't do this, if Sony doesn't launch it by the end of the year, or at least even give us an announcement, I think they've sorely screwed themselves over. They're not going to necessarily lose, but they're going to see a lot of people go with, you know what, I might pick up an Xbox Series S, because I'm not an Xbox fan anyway, but it's going to become cheaper. And if Microsoft releases a $50 dongle for you to play Xbox, they will sell that hardware. I mean, like, that's a Christmas gift you just throw in. Be like, look, my friend's a big PlayStation fan. I want him to play this Bethesda game. Here you go. I mean, I've enjoyed Game Pass because now Christmas, all the kids that are in my life's nephews and nieces, they all got Game Pass because I don't have to buy them a console anymore. Uncle doesn't need to do all that heavy lifting. I just need to give them Game Pass and it's done. It is great. It's a great service. So I think all these other companies need to look at it and go, like, we are missing out. It's the race that, Netflix started, and then Disney was like, oh, we're missing out on all this money. We need to set up our own service. And HBO said the same thing. So it's just that whole race that they all need to catch up quickly, or else they're just going to lose out.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that opinion. Let me bring in one other person. Before we do, I want to address Warren's comment. Warren says in the chat, Nintendo will never do it. Their first-party brands are too strong. I don't disagree, but I think we also have a very recent example of a company with very strong first-party brands that did put a subscription in front of it, and that would be Disney. Disney Plus. They've taken all these major brands, Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, and for one small price, in my opinion, you get all this content, and I feel like they've set themselves up to kind of dominate in streaming the same way that Nintendo could probably dominate in gaming if they just let us subscribe. Let me pay you $10 a month for your catalog. I would do it. All right. I'm bringing in Front Page Tech. This will be our last guest for the show. We're going to end it on some Game Pass talk. I just want to hear his thoughts on this as well as the whole Bethesda thing. Then we'll go to questions.
All right.
And then we'll be out of here. Mr. Front Page Tech.
Painfully honest tech.
Painfully honest tech.
Whoa. Oh, my God. What am I doing?
What is that?
Looking for Prosser to show up.
Oh, man.
My apologies.
Like, no, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I've been mistaken for John. Never. But but no, I mean, on the Game Pass thing, I think that it's been kind of sneaky. But so I got an Xbox Series X. I have not yet been able to score a PS5, and I'm a PlayStation guy, right? I also play on PC. When I looked at the Xbox Pass, the Game Pass, I was like, oh, there's Squadrons, which I own on PC. I don't have to buy it again. There's Fallout. There were literally like 10 different titles that I didn't have to buy again. And some of them were games that I played on PlayStation, like Battlefield, stuff like that. Some of them were games that I played on PC. Some of them are games that I wanted to check out but didn't want to spend, $70 on.
Right.
So I think for somebody like me, who is mostly a PlayStation guy, and now with the advent of crossplay and stuff like that coming around, all of a sudden I can be console agnostic on those games that I can get through. I can play on my PC, I can play on my Xbox, I can do whatever. And PlayStation's kind of getting left behind in that. I mean, they've got to be like tearing their hair out because people can't get the hardware, right? I mean, Xbox is not much better, but at least it's been a little bit more available.
Yeah.
So that's the short term. You can convert people over to an Xbox experience if they can do the things that they were already doing on their other consoles, if they can play the games. If you're a casual, like if you're just a straight up casual gamer for whatever it was it $12 a month or something like that? You have your pick of like so many different AAA games that maybe you wanted to check out, but you weren't ready to commit that kind of money to. And so I think it's the perfect storm, because I really firmly believe that this is the last console generation. I think that the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X are so close to what PCs can do anyway. And then smart TVs are getting so much smarter and more powerful. Like at some 7 years from now, if this console generation lasts 7 years like the last one, I can't see another console generation, but I can see the intellectual properties, the games, the catalogs, all making their move over. Like, Netflix started out with DVDs. DVDs are dead. Netflix owns the market, right? They own the streaming market, although their programming hasn't been as good as it once was. It's, they still were way ahead of the game. And I think that Xbox and Microsoft had the opportunity to be way ahead of the game as well. Like when people look at like, oh, well, if it's a dongle, I pay $100, $50, whatever it is for that dongle to plug into my TV, or I buy a Samsung TV and it's got Xbox built in. And these TVs are now going to have VSync support. They're now going to have 120 hertz. They're not, some like the higher end TVs already have this stuff. So the gaming experience that people could have is just going to be absolutely fantastic without having to do all of this extra lifting. And Game Pass just puts everything right there in front of you. So it goes against the console wars mentality. It's no longer like PlayStation versus Xbox. It's about the content. And if Sony doesn't play the same game, I mean, they've always won on content because they had exclusives, right? And their exclusives have always been better. But now, I mean, if you can play nearly anything you want except those PlayStation exclusives and not have to spend, I mean, if you buy 10 games a year, $700, then I guess you're paying that if you're doing the Game Pass, but you're playing multiple games. You're playing whatever, basically whatever you want. So I think it's brilliant.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Yes. Was well said
on here. So I think the one thing I want to respond to before we get to the questions on what Jason just said, I do feel like we're still going to have consoles at least for one more generation, because one thing that consoles do for these companies is allows them to get this licensing money. And Microsoft has actually come out and said flat out, there will be more Xbox hardware in future generations, at least for one more. So unless they, scrap that, it seems like they have this vision that we don't see just yet. The other quick thing, he said spending $700 a year on games versus on Game Pass. Game Pass is $10 a month. You can spend $120 a year and get access to all this stuff, which I believe they have over 300 games on there at this point. So it's incredible. I didn't expect us to turn to the Game Pass show.
It was interesting. It's like a real quick pivot. I love playing like the what if scenarios down the road, not based on anything. I mean, you could say Samsung QLED TV Xbox edition. I mean, there are people in the comments talking about what about having this built into TVs. Just the ultimate what if. Let's play the ultimate what if, right? You can get apps on your PS5. What about a Game Pass app on your PS5?
Well, listen, you don't even need the app. When they release it for browser, just go to the browser on your PS5. In fact, if you have an Xbox One and you don't want to buy an Xbox Series S or X, go to the browser on that and play Game Pass. Like, I feel like there's something here. There's more to Game Pass and Game Pass streaming than what Microsoft has led on so far. And I feel like we're in for a couple more surprises.
I agree. And we talked about Google earlier, not really caring that much about the Pixel. They're a big company, too many irons in the fire. They don't care about the Pixel. Microsoft is huge, and they care about gaming. I don't know if they care about Xbox hardware, but they care about gaming. And it's amazing to see what a company with their resources can do when they care and see the potential. And clearly the future is in Game Pass. And I think Microsoft has not only the war chest and the budget, but also the business minds and the acumen to play real. I mean, for lack of a better analogy, play hardball. I mean, right? Bring in the show.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an amazing coup, and I think a real sort of smack across the bow to PlayStation fans. And I think what Jason said too about not being able to get hardware. There's a lot of people who want to play PS5, can't get one, and just like F it.
Right. Man, I would. We're gonna go to questions, but I would have loved to be in the room when PlayStation executives saw the news drop that Game Pass was getting the show on day one. Okay, let's get to these questions.
All right.
First one right here from Josh. Do you think LG should have seen the end of their smartphone line a while ago?
Yes. 8 consecutive quarters of loss.
I mean, that's wow. 8 that's 2 straight years. I feel like when I saw, everybody seemed to think when they saw the wing, right? Oh, LG is innovating it. When I saw that, I was like, that's it. Like, no one is buying that. No one. That's not what people. What are you flipping? No.
I love the wing, but I get that. I get that it wasn't a big seller, and I get why people
average consumer though. 100%. I get why we would like it, but the average person they don't get out of here with that. So I think they did see it coming, and they started trying these weird things to see if anything would jumpstart the line, but it just didn't work. Okay, let me mark that as answered. Let's see here. Next, Jason asks, Apple was founded 45 years ago. Can they keep being at the forefront of new tech? And I feel like, for me, if I were answering this, I would say yes. It doesn't mean I think they will, but they can, because the Apple of today is not the Apple that was started 45 years ago with Steve Jobs at the helm and all that. I think Tim Cook is a tremendous CEO with good vision. And in an interview this morning, he actually said, I don't think he meant it as a big announcement, but he doesn't see himself being at Apple in 10 years. So he's 60 years old today, so 10 years from now he's 70. There's not going to be a 70-year-old CEO running Apple. So I believe they're already planning not just for the future of the product line, but for the future of who's leading the company. And if they keep up with the trajectory they're on, and especially in this day and age where we're seeing so much just in tech in general, take company names out of it, tech and biotech, we're in an age where we're seeing so much innovation. Apple has the opportunity, I think, to stay where they are. What do you think, though?
I'm going to play devil's advocate. Certainly, I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is yes. But Apple is essentially the iPhone company, and all their products are iPhone peripheral, right? AirPods, all that kind of stuff for iPhone peripherals. But they're an iPhone company that also makes some computers and tablets for the most part. If your whole business, or at least, I don't know the exact percentage, but let's say 60% of your business is reliant on one series of products, that would give me pause, right? BlackBerry dominated for decades. There's always somebody hungrier looking to get in there. So while I do think Apple will keep being at the forefront, I do not think that they can keep resting on their laurels and cannot go the BlackBerry route. Don't make us choose between 3G and Wi-Fi. Don't give us the modern version of that choice. And I think Apple will be fine.
I absolutely agree with you. It does seem like Apple is, from all the rumors, looking into what's the next big thing rather than just kind of sticking with the iPhone.
Yes.
So that is at least good news. Okay, next question. We're just rapid firing through these. Do you see LG's decision to use WebOS WebOS into their TVs was a good idea? I think it was a good idea. WebOS has been cool. It's been, I think, the most fluid, responsive OS since they started using it. This year with the new TVs is the first time they've drastically changed it. I haven't used the 2021 TVs yet, but it looks like WebOS has kind of grown up. It's less like bubbly and fun and looks more utilitarian. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I have a 2020 LG OLED in my bedroom with WebOS. I love it. I think it's amazing. I think it's one of the best TV OSs out there. I wish WebOS still existed on phones, but I think it's a solid decision.
Okay, we got 3 more. Next question. What do you think the future of applications for the Mac will be now with M1 and App Store continuity? Will developers continue with web apps? Well, the thing with web apps is they work anywhere, right? If you have a web app, it can work on a Mac, it can work on a PC, an Android device, a tablet, a Chromebook, an iPhone. But I feel like similar to when I said earlier with Game Pass, like I feel like there's something there that we don't even. There's more to the story than we're seeing today. I feel like there's more to the story than we're seeing today when it comes to how apps are going to interact with Apple hardware. I think we're still in the early stages of this, and the full breadth of what's going to happen won't be revealed until basically the next major Apple product comes.
So, Rumi, who asked that question, did you like how Andrew danced around it and didn't answer your question directly?
I thought I did. Will they
Danced
continue with
around
web apps? Yes, they will.
Okay, there's an answer. I think web apps will always have a place, but I think when developers can have access to Mac OS users as well as iPhone, iPad OS users, that's also a very endearing market to get into. So I think both will continue to be developed for.
All right. Next question. Josh is back. Do you see more products of LG going away? Could you see some other company buy LG? I personally don't see another company buying LG. I think a lot of times people don't realize just how huge some of these companies are, especially in like the Asia area. Like I said earlier, LG is not just a phone company. They're making TVs. They're making displays for other TV makers. They were making phones. They're making washing machines. They're making fridges. They are massive. Yep. Just because they failed in one area. Just like, would you say, if I said to you, LG stopped making fridges because no one was like, so what? They have so many other product lines that they're a behemoth. I don't think they're going anywhere.
Well,
as far as products go, though, any products, I mean, their TVs are top of the line. I think that's probably the best thing they're known for. I don't see what other industries, they're not going to leave the home market, right? Like the home appliances.
I think maybe what Josh was asking, could LG exit the US market? That answer could potentially be yes. But in their home country of South Korea, I mean, the pillars, that whole economy, it's Samsung, it's LG, and Hyundai, Hyundai, Kia in there. I mean, the country is so reliant. It's too big to be sold and too big to fail in South Korea. Now, they could certainly leave the US market, but I don't see that coming either. I think, if anything, we're going to see a better, leaner version of LG. I think we're going to see better displays, better screens, better TVs, more money spent behind those. I think we're going to see something new with their home appliances. I'm not that plugged into home appliances, but I think we'll see more money and more R&D poured in. And I think that's where LG's really been good. Let them make the hardware. They make amazing hardware. I think we're going to see a new version of LG over the next coming years. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And by the way, Apple has been promoting LG's displays for the average consumer, because Apple has a very high-end display, but if you're not going to buy that, they recommend the LG Ultrafine. So I think LG is going to be okay even without phones.
Yeah.
Last question. Josh again. Josh hit us with several questions. Do you see a smaller notch and a slight camera upgrade as the main features for the iPhone 13 or 12, that's what we're going to call it? Let me just say, the size of the notch is not a feature. That is not a feature. It just is. It just is. It's just, I'm buying the phone because, did you see that small notch? I need to pre-order. No, it's not a feature.
I want to sell you the problem and sell you the solution to that problem.
Every year, Apple tries to do something with the camera that stands out. So I do think we'll see something that would be considered more than a slight camera upgrade. But I think it's going to be like with the iPhone, it's always the whole of the package. I rarely think it's any one thing, even though Apple might say, hey, 5G, major feature. I really think it's about all the little things. We talked about it on last week's show. If you take everything that's rumored and put it all together, that seems like it's just the whole of the phone is the major feature and not any one thing. What do you say?
I mean, I think that's a fair answer. I mean, the rumors certainly are leading to the notch being smaller in the iPhone, let's call it 13 line across the board. Apple does like to sort of gravitate to their whole package. So we'll see cameras. I think we'll see the sensor shift technology make its way across the whole camera line, not just on the Pro Max version. And I think that alone will probably be enough upgrade, plus some Apple marketing magic, sort of make people want to do that upgrade. And then trying to presumably upsell people to 120 hertz, whatever their promotion on the Pro line. I think will probably round out that package well. What makes me excited about the next generation phones is the next generation Qualcomm modems that are going to be in them that are theoretically significantly better than what we have right now. And we see the speed test all the time. I've done it. We're like, oh, look how slow 5G is. That's not the 5G story, right? You're connected to 5G. It's theoretically much faster. Your speeds right now, there's a lot of bottlenecks to get that speed to your phone. Getting those modem upgrades, while very not a sexy feature, is a huge step to getting those speeds that people are expecting with 5G.
Yes.
So I am excited for that. And I'm sure that's something Apple won't even mention on stage. It'll probably be on their like everything else slide that they put up there. They'll screenshot and read through. Other than that, the big feature probably on the iPhone 13, Touch ID allegedly coming back either in screen or on the power button.
Got it. Okay. By the way, Josh has said he's sorry for spamming the question area, but let me just say we appreciate that.
Like, we love those comments.
This is why we're doing this show on Super, is to get that back and forth with the listeners and viewers. Let me bring Jason back up because we're about to get out of here. But I just want to thank you, Jason, for having us here on Super, hosting us on Super, and just let people know, remind people before we get out of here what this is all about and what they can expect from this platform in the future.
Well, let me just say thank you to John. I will thank Drew once he gets back.
No, you can just thank you. Thank me.
Listen. Since he's not here, I will just say I've always liked you better, John. Oh
I'm
my
right
God!
Here. Wow!
Dang it! Oh, if only I timed that more perfectly. But more importantly, I just want to say thank you both. This has been a really great experience for me. I'm normally the one hosting these things, so this has been an oddly stressful time for me because I'm not in control. But I really do appreciate it. For those that are interested in seeing more Super shows, we've got lots coming. It is not live on our website yet, but this Friday we are going to be having the pleasure of interviewing Titus O'Neil, who is a WWE wrestler. I know, Drew, you're a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And as somebody who is a wrestling aficionado, oh, wait, I'm not. Oh, this is going to be an exciting show.
Me and Warren will be there.
Come on over to super.events where we've got more shows. You can follow me on Twitter at Jason Nellis if you want to see more. And we're going to be having some fun. But most importantly, as we are about to close out, guys, was this fun for you? Was this something you'd like to do again in the future?
I love this. I had a blast with this. I don't know how it's going to translate to the audio side, people listening in their cars, but I loved this live sort of geared up kind of show.
Yeah, I think it was fun. Like, usually it always feels like John and I are hanging out as friends and we bring one other friend in. Yeah. And today it just felt like it was just a group of us friends hanging out, talking, plus the listeners and people who follow us elsewhere who we don't usually get to talk to other than through text in 140 characters or 280, whatever. So this was really cool. I am looking forward to seeing how this platform grows.
Same.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the Super Team, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun, and definitely to those of you who joined us in the front row as well as in the questions and in the chat, this was awesome. I had a great time. I hope you all did too.
Thank you, everybody. I had a blast with this. So thanks, Super, for hosting us. And thank you, everybody, for stopping by and chatting. I had a bunch of topics that we didn't even get to that I'm going to save for next week's show.
Next week. There you go.
And that is it for this edition of Geared Up. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, you can catch John and I on YouTube. I'm at youtube.com/gearlive and John is at youtube.com/John4Lakers. Feel free to head over and subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on all the latest tech. Speaking of subscribing, you can subscribe to Geared Up in your favorite podcast app if you haven't done so already. Just search Geared Up, that's 2 words, not one, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Overcast, or really wherever you choose to listen. If you like what we do, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It really helps other people find the show. Geared Up is a Gear Live podcast, and you can see more from us at gearlive.com. Thank you so much for listening. For John Rettinger, I'm Andrew Edwards, and we'll catch you in the next episode.